I'll date myself a little bit here, show you how old I am by remembering a rock band from the 70s, back in the late 70s, a band named Heart, kind of a local band. Sisters Ann and Nancy Wilson were the sort of lead singers, played the guitar. And as I say, came from this area. When I was in Ringdahl Junior High in Newport Hills, I was in 9th grade. And the Wilsons' father was a teacher at Ringdahl. We just knew him as Mr. Wilson. We had no idea that there was any other connection. He was simply my English teacher. But in June of 1976, Mr. Wilson had somehow talked his daughters and their band into coming to Ringdahl to give us a live concert. Now, Heart had already put out their first album, and again, some of you may remember hits like Magic Man, Crazy on You. Barracuda was a little later. Anybody remember Barracuda? Well, if you don't recognize that, you saw Take It From Me. They were big. I mean, they top 40 hits sort of stuff, national airtime. My point is, they were honest to goodness rock band. They were there. And they were going to give a free concert just for us, a couple hundred 12 to 14-year-olds in our little Ringdahl gym, which sounds pretty cool. But I remember, I do have a memory of that afternoon. School got out, and I was wandering across the campus, and I heard the electric guitars kind of getting tuned and warming up in the gym. And I wondered, should I go to the concert? My choice was going to hear Heart live or walking home and watching reruns on TV. And I knew high school students, who I thought would have been cool, or college students that were beyond me, or adults, there were people who would have paid really good money to listen to Heart live from 25 yards away. But I was thinking, I chose instead to watch Gilligan's Island reruns. I said, I'm not going to go. I just don't feel like it. I'll go home and watch TV. So I heard after the fact from my friends who had gone, that not that many people really went to the Heart concert. I wasn't alone. And thinking back, I never saw this, but I picture it. I kind of cringed thinking, here's Nancy and Ann Wilson up there on the stage of looking out at this half-empty gym and thinking, thanks, Dad, for talking us into coming to this place where we're being rejected by 8th graders. He never said anything that I know of. But I also was thinking, what must Mr. Wilson have thought? He thought he was doing this great favor. Hey, I got this great band. You guys get to get here for free. And we decided not to take him up on it, at least too many of us. And I think of that memory from 9th grade when hearing this parable of the wedding feast. So God is this king who by the end has invited everybody to this biggest celebration imaginable. This is the feast of his son, the prince. Right? And many ignore him, or they actually insult him. They decide not to. They've been invited, but they decide at the last moment to come up with an excuse not to go. Some of them actually kill his messengers. And they have their reasons for doing this, but they're not good reasons, but they have their reasons for doing this. So at one level, certainly this parable, we're talking about the kingdom of heaven, and about Jesus himself to invite us into that kingdom. But at the next level down, that's, again, the whole idea of heaven, but also the Eucharistic feast. This is the great feast, and this is the banquet that we're invited to. And I know the big part of my problem that day at Ringdahl was I just didn't appreciate the opportunity that I was being given. Like many, for those of you at junior high, just ignore this, but for me in junior high, they may not understand the priorities that an adult perspective would have, saying, actually, this is a great opportunity, you should go. Even just so you can say, I went to Heart live concert. But I didn't appreciate it. And how much do we really appreciate this idea that God is inviting us to this feast where he becomes present, live. The Mass is Jesus live. He's here. Now, if we don't have faith in that, then it makes sense. Oh, those Catholic people doing their ridiculous thing there, of course you don't go. That makes sense if you don't believe it. But if we say we believe it, what's our thinking? I'm not saying that ignoring Jesus in the Eucharist is simply proof that we don't believe, I think it's more complicated than that. We can have belief and simply have it in such a way that it doesn't motivate us or spur us to the action that it should. I'm thinking again about the concert, the Heart concert. It wasn't that I didn't think Heart was a real band. For those of you who are back then, the top 40 radio stations was KJR. And they were playing on KJR. And so I knew they were a good band. I liked some of the songs. But at one level I knew it was cool they were playing the gym. I just didn't want to go. Yeah, not that big a deal. Mindlessly missing out. I thought hanging out would be better for some reason. Again, I don't think, objectively speaking, if I had to do it over again, I would go to the Heart concert. If I was a 14-year-old today and I was back in 1976 and I had looking at even as a 62-year-old priest, I would still go back and say, yeah, let's go to the Heart concert. I think it's a better thing. But it wasn't what I chose. I think that's the way many of us Catholics are. We're like that 13-year-old. We have trouble appreciating how much we're offered in the Eucharist, what's really there. So we're adults, but our spiritual knowledge and sensitivity there is not as fully developed. We actually may believe it. In fact, you're here. I imagine most of you believe at some level that Jesus is here in the Eucharist, and that's cool. And you decide to come. That's wonderful. But what about when we don't? What must God the Father think when we decide not to come? We don't take him up on the invitation that he's given to us, and we responded to saying yes when we were baptized and confirmed. That's like RSVPing to God saying, yeah, I'm going to show up. And then we always find reasons at the last minute, well, I don't really want to go, and here's my reason, sort of. What does he think of those reasons? Are they really that good? Are they the spiritual equivalent of like Gilligan's Island reruns? Which aren't bad. Those are kind of funny, but they're not a live Heart concert. I mean, today I want to remind you, not only that, again, my mom always said, if you RSVP to an event, you have to show up. You have an obligation to do that. So we have an obligation to show up for the Eucharist. That's true. But today, you're here. So I'm preaching to the choir at some level, but there's also another gap to cross here. I think that's between those. The parish is divided. Every parish is between those who you've heard of them, Eastern Christmas, Catholic Eastern Christmas, those people. Then that comes more than that. Then there's like the every other week people, and they say this is great, but there's a huge difference between that and then those who are always here every week, unless they're on vacation, they're sick, they're here. And I just think that the difference is, and this is a huge spiritual difference, between those for whom the Eucharistic feast is the foundation of the week and those for whom the Eucharistic feast is an option in the week. So again, the idea that it's not optional, it's just that's the foundation. Or it's saying, yeah, I might go, I might not, it depends. Lots of things happening, and I have to try to figure out where is it in my priority list this weekend. So, Feast of the Lamb's here. Come. I'd like to today just to make a little addition there. This is not the Eucharist, but still, it's kind of like a Heart concert. We've invited John Leonetti to come to our parish. He's a nationally known Catholic speaker. So again, national airtime. And he's going to be here tonight at 7 and tomorrow night at 7 as well. And he's going to talk tonight about who is God and why does that matter? And then Monday night, he's going to talk about God's dream for your life. And I hope you come again, unless you have good excuses maybe, but if you don't, come. We need to open ourselves up to what John Leonetti has to say, I think. I know that the guys who went to the men's conference this past year said he is a great speaker, so just there. Again, don't make me like Mr. Wilson. I invite him and like 4 people show up. So that Heart concert was a missed opportunity of a memorable experience. And honestly, it wasn't that big a deal. I mean, it hasn't crushed me. It hasn't been a major problem. The Eucharist is infinitely more than a rock concert, as you know. So what's our reason for not going? If it's because we're too busy, again, the parable says some ignored the invitation, one went away to his farm, another to his business. What did God think about those ideas? And so this is not simply an obligation. This is an invitation to the greatest party, the greatest reality there is. We've already RSVP'd. We've committed ourselves in our baptism, our confirmation. Let's come. Let's show up to the party.